Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
It started with a ding at 8:42 on a Thursday morning, just as I was pouring the last bit of milk into my coffee, the cheap kind, powdered and clumpy, because I had forgotten to grab the half and half again. My phone buzzed with a text, then another, and within seconds the screen lit up with a flood of notifications, one after another like a jackpot machine going off. I wiped my hands on a towel and picked up the phone, heart already sinking at the words family trip, beaming in bold from the group chat banner. The chat title was Beach Bash 2025, all caps, all exclamation marks, because subtlety was never Karen's thing. I opened it, half expecting the usual chaos of Heather's misspelled texts and Karen's bossy bullet points, but I should have known better. What I walked into wasn't a plan. It was an ambush. 10 people had already responded before I even got a chance to scroll. There were yay, S, and finally, S, and someone even dropped a palm tree gif. There was talk of flights, of splitting an Airbnb with a pool, of bringing extra sunscreen for the kiddos. And in the middle of it, just casually, like someone dropping a rock into a glass of wine, was Karen's message, "We just figured it'd be too expensive for you anyway, Claire." Didn't want to make it awkward. My thumb froze on the screen. It wasn't even a question. No one had asked if I wanted to come. No one asked if I could come. They had already decided I couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't. And the worst part? Heather hadn't said a damn thing to stop it. Not a single, "Claire might want to join," or "She's helped us so much, we should at least ask." Just silence. Not a word, not a pushback, just her usual soft agreement. Her trademark, go along to get along, passivity. The bile rose in my throat before the anger did. I had bought those kids' shoes when Heather and Mark couldn't afford new ones for school. I had paid her car insurance more months than I could count, even after she forgot to mention it was overdue until the day before the notice came. I sent Christmas money, bought birthday cakes, even covered Mia's braces deposit without asking to be paid back. I've done more for Heather's family than I've ever done for myself. And yet here I was, excluded like some poor cousin who couldn't chip in for gas. I didn't reply right away. I just watched as the messages kept coming in, as my other cousins planned flight times and picked out matching swimsuits for the family photo. I sipped my coffee, bitter and cheap, and thought about how goddamn perfect this moment was. They had no idea what they'd just done. They thought they were being subtle, being tactful, sparing me the embarrassment. What they didn't know was that they had just handed me a reason. A reason I didn't know I needed. When Heather finally texted me privately, probably realizing I hadn't responded in the main chat, it was one of her classic cop-outs. "Hey, hope you're not mad. It's just a small group trip, you know, low budget, nothing fancy." The irony of her saying low budget after I'd helped them out of 3 overdraft notices in the last year nearly made me laugh out loud. I stared at her text for a good full minute before replying. Just one word, okay. That was it. No anger, no guilt trip, no speech. Just okay. She double texted, then triple texted. "Are you sure? You're not upset? You know we love you, right?" I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I opened my banking app, scrolled to the recurring transfers, and started hitting the cancel button like I was unplugging wires from a ticking bomb. Food card gone. Auto payment to State Farm in her name, done. Mia's college savings deposit paused. Every dollar that I had sent over the past 6 years like clockwork was now staying right where it belonged. With me. The thing is, I didn't cut them off out of spite. I did it because I finally saw the truth. I wasn't family to them, I was just a bank with a warm smile and no demands. The kind of support you forget to thank because it never threatens to leave. Until now. Karen might be the loud one, the planner, the self-declared matriarch of our generation. But I was the one holding real power and they never saw it. They never even considered it. And Heather? She didn't defend me because she never had to. I was always the backup plan. The safety net. The silent aunt who showed up with bags of groceries and left without photos. Well, not anymore. They thought they were planning a vacation. They had no idea they'd just started a war. The first thing I did, the very next morning, was log into my bank and cancel the monthly Venmo transfer that I'd been sending every fourth Wednesday for nearly 5 years. That was the grocery buffer, the unspoken agreement that let Heather avoid the embarrassment of asking for help while still having enough to fill the fridge. It was only $200, but that money had carried them through more than one rough patch, including the time their middle kid got the flu and the pharmacy wouldn't release the meds without full payment. Not once did she say thank you, not even a nod of acknowledgement beyond a passive, "Oh, you're a lifesaver" at Thanksgiving while pouring herself a third mimosa. But I didn't do it for praise back then. I did it because I thought that's what family does, fills in the cracks so the house doesn't collapse. After that, I logged into the State Farm portal and checked the auto policy tied to my name, Heather's beat-up Honda Civic, which was technically still under my name because she couldn't qualify for her own plan back when she and Mark tanked their credit. I was supposed to just help her get through 6 months, but it had been almost 7 years, and the bill still showed up in my inbox every month like clockwork. I clicked cancel and then immediately checked the box to receive an email confirmation, just in case she tried to claim it was some kind of glitch later on. I even screenshotted it, just for myself, and filed it into a new folder I named Unpaid Debts. The next one was the hardest, because it felt the most innocent. The Christmas account I'd opened quietly in a separate bank under just my name, which I used to buy Heather's kids all their gifts. They thought Santa was generous and that their parents were scraping together the money. But that was me. I was the one tracking toy trends in October, catching Black Friday deals and double wrapping everything to make it feel magical. One year, when money was tight for me and I had just been laid off, I still spent over $800 on gifts for her 3 kids because Heather had had a rough year and really wanted the holidays to be special. I ended that account too. It was a few taps, a short pause, and then it was gone like it had never been there at all. By the time I'd cut off all $500 I was sending every month, which adds up to about $4,000 a year, I realized something. They never even noticed it was missing. No one called. No one texted. Not Heather, not Mark, not even the teenage daughter who used to send me short little thank you notes that I'm pretty sure were ghostwritten by her mother. Life just went on. Or so I thought. It took exactly 17 days before I started to see the first signs. Heather began posting cryptic Facebook statuses that were vague enough to deny but pointed enough to land like darts. Some people love to act generous until they don't get invited somewhere. That one had a sad face at the end. Then there was, "Funny how people can watch you struggle after all you've done for them," which got 17 comments, all from middle-aged church moms saying things like, "Keep your chin up, girl, and you'll bounce back. God provides." I didn't respond. I didn't even click like. I just watched it all play out like someone flipping through a soap opera on mute. Heather wanted attention. She wanted pity. And more than anything, she wanted me to feel guilty enough to step back in. But I was done. I was done being the silent donor, the background benefactor whose only role was to make sure everyone else got to pretend they were standing on their own 2 feet. The real turning point came when I got a text late on a Tuesday night. It was almost 10:30, and I was already in bed, curled up with a book and finally allowing myself to enjoy the silence that comes when you're no longer someone else's safety net. The message was short, and Heather didn't bother with her usual half-cheerful tone. Just this, "Hey, did something happen to the kids' food card? We're a little short this week." I stared at the screen. The food card. She meant the prepaid Visa I loaded each month and mailed in a greeting card with no return address. She always pretended she thought it came from some community pantry, like it was fate or a miracle or luck, anything other than her own sister keeping her kids from going hungry. She never acknowledged it out loud. But she always used it. I didn't reply. I locked the phone and set it on the nightstand, heart oddly calm, breath steady. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting out of guilt, panic, or some twisted sense of duty. I was reacting like someone who had finally remembered that she had a life too, and that maybe, just maybe, she didn't owe anyone an explanation for choosing herself. Outside, a storm was rolling in. I could hear the wind pushing against the windows, dry leaves scattering across the porch. Somewhere out there, Heather was beginning to understand what it meant when someone stops holding everything together. She thought I'd always be there. She thought I couldn't walk away. But what she never understood, what they all never understood, was that I didn't need to slam the door to make a point. All I had to do was quietly stop showing up. And now that I had, let's just say the silence was going to get very, very loud. The first real crack came 2 weeks after that text, and it was louder than I expected, like glass hitting tile, sharp and splintering. I didn't even have to ask. I saw the evidence right there on Heather's Instagram story. The car was gone. No driveway shot. No gas station selfies. No more boomerangs of her hand on the steering wheel with the caption, "School drop-off life." At first, I figured she might have just skipped the payment or taken it in for repairs. But then I checked the account again, the one with my name still linked to her insurance, and there it was, bold red letters, policy terminated due to repossession. It was real. They'd taken it. And it didn't take long for the next domino to fall. I heard about Mark's little outburst through a mutual friend, one of those neighborhood ladies who calls everything interesting when she really means juicy. Apparently, he'd stormed around the house like a bear with a stubbed toe after finding out that the gas cards he used for work weren't some kind of government perk or cashback scheme, but rather quietly funded by his sister-in-law, me. For years, he'd filled up that truck of his without asking where the funds came from. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe Heather told him some half-truth and he chose not to dig deeper. Either way, when the balance hit zero and the next card never came in the mail, he put the pieces together fast. And then came the saddest part of all, the kids. Those sweet, oblivious kids who never asked for anything except second helpings at dinner and someone to cheer during school plays. I heard from Mia, the oldest, that Friday pizza nights just stopped without warning. No takeout, no frozen backups, not even the homemade kind with tortillas and string cheese. Just silence and excuses and some tired muttering from Heather about tight weeks and unexpected expenses. Claire's famous Friday pizzas, the ones I always secretly covered with a prepaid Visa and a smile, were now gone. And it hurt more than I thought it would, knowing they probably thought their mom just didn't feel like celebrating anymore. I didn't gloat. I didn't post anything online or drop a single passive-aggressive comment. I simply observed from my quiet, unassuming corner of the world, sipping coffee that wasn't paid for by guilt and finally breathing air that wasn't laced with resentment. Because the truth was, I hadn't just been giving them money. I'd been giving them peace. I had made it so Heather didn't have to fight with Mark about bills. I'd made it so she could say yes when her kids asked for things without thinking twice. I made her look capable when she wasn't. And she still looked me in the digital eye and told me I probably couldn't afford a beach chair. I remembered once, maybe 5 years back, Heather had said during a Thanksgiving cleanup, while scraping plates and not lifting a single finger to help, that I would never really understand how hard it is to raise a family. She said it like a knife wrapped in velvet, with this smug little shrug like she pitied me for being alone. Meanwhile, I was working 2 jobs to pay off a divorce I never wanted, burning through my savings just to avoid crawling back to an empty marriage, while still finding ways to make sure her kids had shoes that fit and enough cereal to last until Monday. I didn't understand, she said. And maybe I didn't. But I understood sacrifice. I understood exhaustion. And I sure as hell understood being used. When Heather finally called me, it was the middle of a Tuesday. No preamble, no warm-up, just her voice cracking before she even got through the first sentence. She said things were just tight this month, and that they were trying to stay afloat, but that a little help could really go a long way. She didn't even say what she needed it for: rent, food, gas, it didn't matter. She was casting a line, hoping I'd bite. But I didn't. I waited until she finished, took a deep breath, and said the words slowly, clearly, without any anger, only clarity. You told me I was too poor to sit next to you in a beach chair. I figure I'm too poor to feed your kids too. There was a pause, the kind that stretches long enough to make you wonder if the call dropped. But it hadn't. She was just stunned. And then it happened, the inevitable deflection, the desperate grasping for someone else to blame. I never said that. That was Karen, she cried, her voice rising, thick with disbelief. Why are you punishing me for what she said? I didn't answer right away because I knew she wasn't really asking. She was scrambling. She was trying to rewrite the moment, to spin it into something less cruel, less humiliating. But I wasn't going to hand her that relief. Not this time. She didn't stop talking, not right away. She stammered something about being under stress and Karen always speaking out of turn and how she never meant for it to come out like that. But I had already heard it. I had read the words in that group chat, etched into my memory like a scar I didn't ask for. The moment they decided I wasn't worth a seat at the table, I decided I wasn't footing the damn bill anymore. So I just said, I heard what I heard. And then I hung up. What she does with that silence is her business now. Me? I've still got plenty more wires to pull. It started small, the way wildfire always does, just a little heat in the air, a few dry branches snapping, a spark you don't pay attention to until the sky turns orange and the smoke pours in through your windows. I was drinking my coffee again, this time with actual cream, not the powdered nonsense I used to settle for out of habit, when my phone buzzed with a message from Aunt Lydia. Not a close aunt, mind you, more like a once-removed but always there at baptisms kind of aunt. She'd never messaged me directly before, not in all the years I'd been quietly footing Heather's bills and pretending I was just a naturally generous soul. Her message was polite but laced with careful curiosity, just checking in. Are you okay, sweetheart? I heard there's been some tension lately. I knew exactly where it was coming from. Heather had started doing what she always did when things slipped out of her control, rewriting history before the ink was dry. She'd been telling people I'd lost it, that I'd cut the whole family off because I didn't get invited to one silly vacation. She made it sound like I was some bitter, lonely woman hoarding pennies in a coffee can and nursing grudges over plastic lounge chairs. And the thing is, she was good at it. She knew how to play soft. She knew how to lean into victimhood like it was a role she'd auditioned for her whole life. But I wasn't going to let her keep the stage this time. A few hours after Aunt Lydia's message, I got another one, this time from my cousin Julia. She and I hadn't spoken in over a year, mostly because she'd hitched her wagon to Karen's social train a long time ago and never looked back. But her message was surprisingly blunt. I just want to say I'm sorry for how Karen spoke to you. That wasn't okay. I don't agree with what she said. Just wanted you to know that. At first, I thought maybe they were testing the waters, sending out feelers to see if I was going to cause a scene or burn down the family group chat with some passive-aggressive quote about loyalty and betrayal. But I wasn't interested in being passive anymore. I had receipts. Literal, actual receipts, bank records, emails, transfer confirmations, years and years of data stacked up like unpaid debts. And while I hadn't originally planned to use them, the whispers turned loud enough to force my hand. So I did what any woman tired of being gaslit by her own blood would do. I dropped a bomb. No preamble, no message, no caption. Just one image, uploaded directly into the Fam Bam Forever group chat at 8:13 a.m. on a Sunday. It was the screenshot. The original one. The one from that very first message Karen had sent. The one where she said, and I quote, "We just figured it'd be too expensive for you anyway." Black and white proof. No ambiguity. No deniability. The timestamp was right there, and so were the reactions from the others, the likes, the laughing emojis, the total silence from Heather. I didn't say a word. I just sent it and logged off. 2 hours later, after I imagined they'd all scrambled behind closed messages, trying to come up with a strategy, I dropped the second bomb. This one wasn't a screenshot. It was a PDF, 47 pages long, labeled Claire's Contributions, 2012 to 2023. Inside were detailed logs of every transaction I had ever made on behalf of Heather and her family, the insurance bills, the Venmo grocery deposits, the prepaid Visa gift cards, the Amazon orders that magically arrived during back-to-school season. I even included the text messages where Heather thanked me in code, just vague enough to avoid explaining to Mark where the help was coming from. And then, nothing. For a full day, the chat went silent. No reactions. No questions. No replies. It was like I'd walked into a crowded room and turned off the lights. I knew they were reading it. The read receipts made that clear, but no one knew what to say. They couldn't. Because what could they say? That I did too much? That I gave too quietly? That I should have demanded recognition for every gift I gave? Eventually, it was Karen who broke the silence. Of course it was Karen. She always needs to have the last word, even when she's dead wrong. You didn't have to pay all that, Claire, she wrote, as if generosity becomes manipulation the second it isn't convenient anymore. I stared at that message for a while. It was everything wrong with them in one sentence: the entitlement, the lack of gratitude, the refusal to take responsibility. So I replied with exactly what I felt. No filters. No politeness. Just the truth. And y'all didn't have to be assholes. But here we are. No one answered after that. But late that night, as I sat in bed rereading everything, one more message came in. It wasn't from Karen or Julia or Aunt Lydia. It was from Heather. She didn't bother pretending anymore. No apologies, no explanations, no tears. Just a raw, bitter accusation, typed out in that rushed way people do when they're still fuming. You always wanted to feel superior. I get it now. You never helped me. You controlled me. I read it twice, maybe 3 times, waiting for the familiar twist of guilt to crawl up my spine, the one that used to make me backpedal, soften, send another $100 gift card to make the world okay again. But it never came, because maybe for the first time in my life, I finally saw what she really thought of me, not as a sister, not as family, not even as a person. Just as a wallet with a face and a history too complicated to untangle. And if that's who I was to her all along, then maybe cutting her off wasn't cruelty. Maybe it was the first honest thing I'd ever done. I wasn't gloating when I pulled the plug for good, I wasn't dancing in my living room or high-fiving the walls, and I didn't toast myself with a glass of wine like I'd won some long overdue prize. If anything, I felt hollow in a way I hadn't expected, like I had spent years building a house for someone else and had finally walked away with nothing but splinters under my skin. The truth is, I was grieving. Not because I missed Heather, not exactly, but because I finally had to admit that the version of her I'd been defending all these years never really existed. The memories came like bad weather, slow and heavy at first, then loud and relentless once the storm hit. I remembered being 27 and freshly divorced, scared out of my mind, working a double shift at the bank and bartending on weekends just to afford that tiny apartment over the laundromat. I remembered how even then, when I had nothing but leftover hurt and half a bed to myself, I still found a way to send Heather a check when she said Mark had lost his job and the lights were getting shut off. Back then, I called it love. Now, I call it a habit, a dangerous one. There was one moment that stuck out above the rest, something I hadn't thought about in years, but now couldn't stop replaying in my mind. Heather had called me late one night, not in her usual performative way, not crying for show, but actually broken. She was pregnant with her 3rd child, and I'll never forget her voice on the line. "I don't think we can afford this one, Claire," she'd whispered like a confession. And me? I told her it would be okay. I promised her I'd help, just until you get on your feet, I said, thinking, stupidly, that there would be a moment when they actually would. But that moment never came, because why would it? I had handed them a cushion, and they had mistaken it for a mattress. Here's the thing they never knew about me, or maybe they did, and just never cared to ask. I work in estate planning. I spend my days helping people put their lives in neat little files for when they're no longer around. I've seen the ugly side of family, the fights over teapots and garages, the siblings who show up with lawyers and leave with nothing but scars. Maybe that's why I always made sure my own plan was clean, quiet, generous. And for over 6 years, I had Heather's kids written into my will, not just included, but protected. College funds, health expenses, even a clause for emergencies. I did it because I loved them, because I thought they deserved a chance to grow up without their mother's chaos on their backs. And I never said a word about it. Until now. The day after Heather sent me that last message, the one where she called my help control, I sat down at my desk, opened the draft of my will, and deleted every name connected to her. It was clinical. No drama. Just a few keystrokes and a single printed signature. Gone. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I told myself it was the logical thing to do. If I died tomorrow, I didn't want my hard-earned savings to go to people who saw me as an obstacle instead of a lifeline. But something about it felt like cutting off my own arm. And then, just when the silence had started to feel like peace instead of punishment, I got the voicemail. It came from Mia, Heather's oldest. 16 years old, smart as hell, soft-spoken, always watched everything from a few feet back like she was already older than the rest of them. I hadn't seen her in months, hadn't heard from her since I canceled the prepaid visa that helped fund her tutoring sessions. Her voice was shaky but careful, like she'd rehearsed the message before recording it. Aunt Claire. Mom's crying again. I don't know what happened, but I miss you. Can we talk? That was it. No demands. No guilt trip. Just a child, a teenager, but still a child, reaching out through the mess her parents made, trying to find something that used to feel like safety. I listened to it once, then again. Then I stared at the phone for what felt like hours, not daring to delete the message, but not pressing play a third time either. I didn't know what to do. I still don't. Because here's the part no one tells you, cutting someone off doesn't make them disappear. It just makes the silence louder, the past clearer, and the future more uncertain. Maybe Heather was right in one twisted way. Maybe I did want to feel superior. Or maybe I just wanted to feel seen. Not used. Not drained. Not obligated. Just seen. I sat there, phone in my hand, wondering if ignoring Mia would make me no better than Heather. Wondering if helping her would mean crawling back into the same old role I had finally escaped. Wondering if you can separate a child from the shadow of their parent, or if love, like debt, just keeps compounding until it breaks you. So what would you do? Would you forgive her? Would you help the kids, even if it meant helping her too? Or would you finally do something for yourself and walk away forever? Screen fades to black.